Okay, so we've got this stack of sources you shared, and we're diving into something pretty fascinating today. It involves Waymo, robotaxis, and some serious recent disruptions.
Yeah, it's quite the mix, isn't it? You've got this really advanced tech hitting some very real, very physical challenges out in the world.
Exactly. And our mission here, based on these articles and reports you've pulled together, is to really understand Waymo's recent decision. They've scaled back their robotaxi service. We want to unpack why.
That's the goal. We need to look at what actually happened on the ground, especially that really dramatic incident in Los Angeles.
Right, the one where the cars were actually attacked during protests. It feels like this perfect storm of tech, urban life, social dynamics, all colliding.
And the headline from these sources is clear. Waymo has temporarily scaled back its operations. It's not just a rumor.
Okay, so it's confirmed, and we're talking about a significant scale back.
Seems like it. The reports mention impacts in several major cities where they've been active. Think San Francisco, Austin, Phoenix, even Atlanta seeing restrictions.
And Los Angeles, where that big incident happened.
Complete suspension there, according to the sources. A total pause in service, timed around planned nationwide protests.
Wow. That's a big move, especially considering, didn't they just hit some kind of milestone? I saw that in one of the articles.
You're right, it's striking timing. The sources point out this is happening shortly after Waymo announced they were doing about 100,000 robotaxi rides a week across their service areas.
So huge numbers, clear growth trajectory, and then bam. Real world events force them to hit the brakes.
Exactly. It just really highlights how vulnerable this whole operation can be to things completely outside the tech itself.
Let's zoom in on that Los Angeles incident then, because it sounds like the real catalyst here, certainly for the LA suspension.
Absolutely. The sources provide some pretty vivid details about what went down during protests against ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
And the detail that jumped out at me was that protesters apparently lured several Waymo cars to a specific spot, Arcadia and Alameda.
That's what the reports suggest, yeah. It wasn't just random cars driving into a protest. It sounds like they were specifically brought there.
And once they were isolated,
The attack started. Tires slashed, windows smashed, anti-ICE slogans spray-painted all over them. Pretty deliberate stuff.
and then setting them on fire, I mean, actually setting fire to empty robotaxis, it's just wild.
It is. And the sources mention how things escalated and how difficult it was to manage. Firefighters apparently couldn't even get to the burning cars because the protests were still going on.
So the cars were just total losses.
Total losses. And think about the cost. These sources estimate Waymo might have around 100 cars operating in LA.
So losing 5 in one go, that's like 5% of their fleet there. Instantly gone.
It's a massive hit, both physically and financially. You can see why they'd immediately suspend service there and why they'd be cautious elsewhere with more protests planned.
Okay, so that brings us to the big question these sources tackle. Why target the Waymo cars? The protests weren't about self-driving tech, right?
No, not directly. It seems, based on the analysis in these articles, that the cars became, well, symbolic targets.
Symbolic. Symbolic of what, though?
Experts quoted in the pieces suggest it's about hitting symbols of power, or maybe the establishment. These driverless cars, they represent high tech, maybe corporate influence, perhaps even a future that feels alienating or threatening to some people.
Okay, I can see that. The tech itself becomes a stand-in for bigger issues.
Right, and beyond the symbolism, there's a really ironic vulnerability that the sources highlight. These robotaxis are kind of easy targets because of how they work.
How so? Because they're autonomous.
Precisely. They're programmed to be incredibly safe, follow all the rules, and crucially, they're designed to stop automatically if they detect an obstacle.
Which is great if it's, a pedestrian or a fallen branch.
Yeah, but if that obstacle is a crowd of people intending to stop the car,
It just stops and sits there.
exactly, it becomes a sitting duck. It can't really react dynamically. It can't speed away. It can't, improvise in that kind of human-driven chaos.
It's stuck following its programming. The reports mention this happened late afternoon on a Sunday, and that detail about luring them really underscores that it wasn't random.
No, it points to a strategic element. And painting them with those anti-ICE messages before torching them connects the act directly to the protest's political aims, suggesting a perceived link, however tenuous, between this tech company and the broader system being protested.
Right. So let's talk about the impact on Waymo then. The cost and safety concerns must have been huge drivers in this scale-back decision, as the sources suggest.
Oh, absolutely. Each one of these vehicles is incredibly expensive. packed with sensors, computers. The sources estimate the gear alone could be anywhere from, what, $28,000 up to $100,000 per car?
Wow. So losing several isn't just annoying, it's a major financial blow, especially when, as the articles point out, Waymo isn't even profitable yet, despite those big ride numbers. They just raised billions to keep expanding.
Exactly. That whole investment model depends on the fleet actually operating safely and reliably. Incidents like this expose a fundamental weakness. These unmanned vehicles are just incredibly exposed during things like civil unrest.
That core safety feature, stopping for obstacles, becomes its Achilles heel in a situation like that.
It really does. The sources make it clear this vulnerability was kind of laid bare when protesters figured out they could just call the cars to a specific spot and trap them.
So it wasn't just property damage, it revealed a gap in how the tech handles this, well, unpredictable, even hostile human behavior.
Mm-hmm. And that realization, plus the sheer cost of replacing those assets, seems to be the clear reason behind hitting pause or restricting service more widely to avoid more losses during further expected protests.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up what we've pulled from these sources in this deep dive. We've seen Waymo had to temporarily scale back services in several cities.
Right, including that complete suspension in LA, which seems directly triggered by that really destructive incident where cars were lured, attacked, and burned during protests.
And we looked at why these specific cars became targets. The sources suggest a mix of symbolic reasons, like representing power or tech, but also their practical vulnerability.
Yeah, the fact that their own safety programming, the stop for obstacles rule, could be exploited to trap them. That was key.
And finally, the sources really emphasize the cost, both the financial cost of losing expensive vehicles and the broader implication of this revealed safety vulnerability, pushing Waymo to limit its exposure.
It all paints a picture, doesn't it? Laid out in these sources you shared, it shows the really complex, sometimes totally unexpected hurdles that this kind of advanced autonomous tech faces when it meets the messy reality of our cities, especially under stress like social unrest.
Definitely. So thinking about everything we've discussed from these sources, considering this vulnerability when AVs meet human chaos, things that just aren't in the code, what does this tell us maybe about the next steps needed? Beyond just more sensors or smarter AI, what's required to actually integrate this tech into the unpredictable real world of our cities?